how's it going? There's something I really wanted to talk about. Now that I'm back making content. This happened. It happened on May 3rd. So it was about like 15 days ago or so. So I'm a little late on commenting on this. Most people that do left content creation already covered it, whatever their opinions are. But I wanted to talk about the Black Hammer organization and their like 200-acre commune that they're setting out to build a city on. Um, and then kind of my take and sort of mainly my take on this approach to solving um, issues for Black Americans. So if we look at the tweet, they say, "Thanks to all of you, Black Hammer has successfully liberated 200 acres of land to build our city for colonized people only. We are located high up in the mountains, 10,000 feet in the air with rich soil. We have one lake, three rivers on the land." No, something I want to preface before I get into this is I don't want to come at people for helping their own community or helping people within their own identity groups, because I think that's important. I mainly want to focus on this approach and why I think this approach is it's one, it doesn't solve the issues, and two, how it may actually be counteractive to the things that we want to solve. Um, so we'll go through some of the pictures to show off the land. Because they said they're going to build a whole city here. Um, this doesn't seem like the best place to build a city, in my opinion. I read some stuff about how the soil there is actually not that good. So I'm kind of curious to see if this commune even like makes it. But if they can make it, more power to them. If they don't, I also won't be that surprised. But let's get into the approach here. I think one thing that we need to keep in mind as people on the left that's really, really important is this idea of universality. What does universality mean? Well, it's obviously everyone under, I guess you could say, one roof. That's kind of a good like pictorial way to think about it. Kind of like us working for the common good, right? For all of us. And I don't think this does that. I actually think this kind of pushes, obviously they're black separatists, but it pushes the separation of different peoples from each other. And I don't think this is how we're going to solve a lot of the issues we want to. We look at the issues that Black Americans face, usually like things like generational wealth, which leads to things like poverty, which then leads to bad schools in their communities, which then can affect them further down the line in their maybe higher education, or maybe they don't get higher education, or just further down in their life when it comes to jobs and whatnot. Or we can look at things like law enforcement, the justice system, and problems in these realms. This solution, this idea of creating a commune for certain groups only, excluding other groups, will never solve these issues. These aren't going to, they're not attempting to. They're almost trying to sidestep it, which isn't good because I'm gonna guess that you can't fit all Black Americans, or I guess they say colonized people, in this 200 acres of land. This is leaving out so many people, especially within the Black community, who are still going to have to deal with the oppression in the U.S. They're not going to be able to run away to this commune, and I don't know if this commune's even going to be successful. So most people aren't going to risk it to go move to a commune that isn't even done yet, or could possibly not be successful when they have their own families and their own bills to worry about currently, right? Um, so first I want to get into, well, I already got into why I think this approach isn't that great because of the fact that it's not a universal approach. It's not solving problems for all Black Americans for the common good for the rest of us as well. Because I think if we can solve the problems for Black Americans or other minority groups, we're going to have a better, well-rounded society for all of us, you know, even including people that have privilege like myself who has some sort of a white privilege, right? I think we're going to create a better society by taking a universal approach, focusing on the common good for all of us, um, including all of the identity groups that we can think of, right? Um, and I don't think this is doing that. I think this is actually pushing more division. And something I want to get into is how approaches like this can be really used against the left. There's already a narrative within the far right that well, when you see like people, I can't think of the guy who was a Nazi that debated space recently or a while back. Um, but they'll talk about how like white liberals, white lefties shouldn't be talking at all for black people or anything, which I don't think most of us claim to be doing in the first place. But they use it as like they diverge that into saying that black people don't want to be with white people. Just like how the Nazis don't want to be with black people, right? Which I don't think I don't think anyone with a brain thinks that that's a consensus. Um, but this will be used as ammo for arguments like that, or it'll be used in arguments about how the left is just really white hating and they don't actually they're not actually for progress. They don't actually want equality. They want to like separate us and they just it's all white hate, right? I don't think we need to give those people ammo on this narrative, and I think this definitely does. Especially because I'm going to talk about the reparations page in a little bit. Um, this just seems really problematic. Like I said before, it doesn't solve the systemic problems that most Black Americans face. Um, it's not going to. This solution also isn't going to encompass all, as they say, colonized people, and it's going to create a further antagonism and the goal of multiculturalism by saying this group only. This doesn't bring about unity, some sort of common goal, some sort of common struggle, if you will. It just further divides. And I kind of want to segue this into how the reason why we should take a more universal approach, not only in actual reality, but even in our rhetoric, is because people like Jordan Peterson, for instance, he has done really well at basically co-opting universality rhetoric as like this sort of like we all want to be equal, no privilege over anyone else sort of thing. Um but done so hollowly, obviously, and held positions that don't line up with this. But he uses this rhetoric, and he gets massively popular. And you see this with tons of right wing people who get massively popular by them, like by the masses, right? Um, and then their political beliefs spread, and then you have a high rate of people who are right wing. I mean, this country is basically half and half. Um, so one we need to take on the approach of universality because one that's actually going to solve the systemic problems these people bring, um that like right wingers and stuff bring to us, and obviously just how the state of things are now, like I said before, with when it comes to poverty in black communities and all that, and within the justice system as well. Universality is actually going to help us solve those issues, fighting for some sort of common good. um And also, it is super, super appealing. The rhetoric of universality is something that most people believe that they believe in. So I think if you use that and then you show like why we need to focus on these certain groups and bring certain resources to them to help these communities, it's going to be easier to get most Americans on board with that. As we've seen, like the insane growth of the right on the internet. Um, because they co-opted the usage of universality. Um, so yeah, I don't think this solution, this sort of separatism, segregationist sort of approach, is really going to solve these problems in a broad sense. And it's leaving a lot of people out just to deal with the oppression that exists within the U.S. as is. Um, so to me, it almost feels kind of like a LARP. It kind of feels like sidestepping the real issues. Um, and for this sort of seeming of revolution. But what I would say here is there's nothing revolutionary occurring here. This isn't solving anything. And if it solves anything for anyone, it's only going to be a small amount of people that actually live in this commune, if it's even successful to begin with. Um, so yeah, one, this isn't focusing on universality, and because of that, it's having a harder time. Oh well, one, it doesn't even solve the systemic problems to begin with, but because it's so anti-universal, it's definitely not going to get people behind it and supporting it. Like, other than people who want to use this as a straw man of the left, and whatnot. Um, yeah, I don't see how this approach is helpful at all. And I don't mean to say, when I say universality, I'm not saying that we shouldn't focus on certain minority groups and whatnot, because obviously to me that's going to be part of universality. And it's not against there being certain like cultural areas for people to go embrace with, go be with people of their same identity, or like a shared identity, right? Like a good example of this would be like, I'm not gonna be against like something like gay bars, right? Like I think that's fine. I think having places where you can meet up with people that have a shared identity and sort of be with each other is fine. We just need some sort of universal umbrella that we're all in contact, we're all learning from one another, we're all realizing each other's issues and being able to help each other in a common struggle to solve these issues. And I just think this approach sidesteps all of the problems and fuels the fire of the segregationist sort of right, or the the left just hates white people sort of rhetoric. Um, and it doesn't really have, there's nothing substantial happening here. There's nothing revolutionary happening here. There's nothing um worldwide big change happening here. Um and I'm not saying every action has to be that, but this isn't, this approach will never develop into something like that. And if it were to become more widespread, it would take us into like a segregationist future, which I don't think anyone wants. Which is why I don't think it's going to happen in the first place. But something I want to get into about giving more ammo to right wingers about how the left hates white people. And there's totally a difference between hating white people and realizing that there's white privilege, which is what we usually on the left we're talking about. We don't literally hate white people. We're talking about problems within um that class being in that having a certain level of whiteness that brings about a certain amount of privilege. You know, just like you have different privileges depending on different parts of your identity, right? Um, which is all we're bringing awareness to. No one act like, I don't think most people genuinely, well, at least within the left, hate white people, right? I mean, I know there's like Mayo side jokes and whatnot, but uh, those aren't really serious. I mean, they are kind of problematic, but anyway, to get into the this aspect, which I think fuels that, is the reparations page. They say, "Are you white? Do you want to help? Do you want to be a good person?" On the right side of history. The only way that you can wash blood off your hands is through following the leadership of African, indigenous, and colonized people, paying reparations for all that's been stolen in your name. Right now, Black Camera Organization is offering several ways to pay reparations. So, one issue I have with this, as this isn't reparations nationwide, which is I think the only reparations that are really going to be helpful, I don't think giving money to this small organization, for the few people that are going to live in this commune, are actually doing anything on a nationwide scale to solve the problems that Black Americans face. Um, I also don't think you need to feel some sort of guilt for being white. I think you need to understand that you have privilege, right? But this is almost pushing at the like, you should feel guilty that you're white and you have blood on your hands and yada yada. Um, Most white people today, I'm not gonna say most, but plenty of white people today don't go out of their way to fuck over African Americans. Obviously, there are racist people out there that do that, but most of these problems are gonna stem from laws that we had in the past that still affect today, like things like generational wealth, which is the leading cause of poverty for the Black communities, and things in our justice system based on uh, what's the word? Based on past ways that we've dealt with problems like this, right? And these issues are the ones that we need to deal with. Um, and these aren't. This isn't the way to do that. I think you have an understanding of that, you're acknowledging your white privilege, and then you can therefore help, right? Like you understand how you're privileged and why these people are not privileged, and from there you can solve these problems. You don't have literal blood on your hands, though. I think this is terrible rhetoric as well. This is really separate. I know they're separatists, but this is literally like you're you're creating an antagonism that doesn't need to be there. Even though there is one to an extent, we should be trying to solve this, and this seems to be pushing it further. Um, Between like racial tensions, and they're like, you can donate $199 for the Mao level, the Shay level. They have different levels of stuff, and if you donate enough, you start getting gear like their merch. which seems so weird to me that they almost it almost feels like they're trying to sell you merch or something. I don't know. This is feels so odd. Um, to me, overall, this whole situation seems so weird. I think this approach is anti to what we should be doing. We should be going with the universal approach. We should be taking that in our rhetoric and in our policies that we're trying to push, um, instead of this separatist approach. One, the universal approach is going to be more effective. You're going to be able to get more people on board with that, and that's going to actually focus on the systemic problems that we have that most Black Americans are suffering from. This sidesteps that completely. This ignores that. This leaves so many marginalized groups to deal with their oppression on their own. Because not everyone's going to live in this commune. And then I think the rhetoric here is super divisive, basically giving ammo to Nazi fascist types or alt-right types to use against the left and hurt us from getting our policies passed and our views more widespread. So, overall, I just think this is a really bad approach. I don't understand why we'd even take this route. I don't know why this route would be fueled. It seems to almost be fueled by a race, like racism. Basically, to me this isn't anti-racism. This is kind of like accepting racism, um, and trying to, instead of solving it, just ignore it, in a weird way. But yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about taking a universal approach. I think that's really important. Fighting for the common good, um, and using universal rhetoric to get more people to see through the lens that we see things and actually bring about real change. Not this, you know, 20 people living in a commune that doesn't actually do anything institutionally, nationally, or any sort of wide scale. And there's so many people just out there to suffer with no solutions. Like, we should be focusing on these larger scale solutions. And there's nothing wrong with smaller scale stuff. I'm not saying everything has to be large scale, but this just seems to not really do anything really at all, other than for the small organization that's going to be there, if it's even successful. Yeah, I mainly just wanted to talk about universality, and I think that's something that we should remember in the left. That is what we're pushing for, right? We're pushing for an equality that's universal, not some sort of segregationist, separationist sort of approach to things like racism. Um, but yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching this. Let me know what you think. Um, Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think so. But if you want to like argue about it in the comments, go for it. Or if you agree with me, that'd be cool too. But anyway, I'll see y'all in the next one.